fantastic day today. So yesterday, if you watch It Is Written Canada, yesterday we had our opening season program. And it was a program about a man in Newfoundland. And he lives in Cape Friels. Any of you know where Cape Friels is? Cape Friels is on the east coast of Newfoundland. And the name of the program was Against the Tide. And so if you get a chance, look on It Is Written Canada's YouTube, and you'll see his name is Joe Stagg. He calls himself a stubborn fisherman from Newfoundland. And when I first started talking to Joe, he was so hard for me to understand. You know, there's some people in some parts of Canada, I don't understand their accent. And that was Joe. So, and he would say to me, I said, so what do you like to do, Joe? And he says, I like to play hockey. I didn't know what he said. So eventually he said it enough times that I knew he was saying what? Hockey, right. And I said, tell me what you've done all your life. He said, fish harvest. I don't know what they said. I said, what? Fish harvest. I'm like, what? Eventually I slowed it down. He was saying he's a fish harvester. Okay, yeah. Yes. So you can watch the program. Joe is the coolest guy, and you'll love the program. We put little subtitles we embedded it in there so that people could follow what he was saying. But its cinematography is beautiful because we had one of our cameramen go up there with a drone and everything, and he did all these shots. Newfoundland is beautiful. Okay, and so anyway, that was just a little bit of advertising for the program. If you haven't watched It Is Written Canada, go to our YouTube and look for Against the Tide, okay? And you can see our friend Joe Stagg. Okay, so tonight's topic is the final test of worship. The final test of worship. This is one of my favorite presentations. I'll show you why. So let me ask you this question. What is the greatest challenge to your spiritual life? What is your greatest challenge to your spiritual life? Yes?
My family.
Your family, okay? Anyone else?
Staying focused.
Staying focused, okay. That's a good one. Staying focused. That's really much in line with what we find when we go throughout the country when we ask this one question. What else would you give? The biggest challenge to your busy. How many of you would say that? Busy, okay? That's the number one reason that we get across the country is chronic busyness. Chronic busyness. Now, chronic busyness is like, wow, if you're so busy, you're so busy, you're kind of clenching your teeth all the time. And then you're saying to people, you're trying to get people out of the house on time, you're trying to get them, and then people are slowing you down, and you're like, is it very easy to love when you're chronically busy? No, okay. It's very hard for you to love when you're chronically busy. And so this thing called chronic busyness, it interferes with our love for God, with the love for our families, with our love for our church members, because this chronic busyness keeps us like a rat on a treadmill. We just go, and we can't get enough done. Why? Because there's just so much to do. Information, looking on your phone, keeping up with what's going on, right? It's just constant. You can't get away from it. It's with you, and you take it with you everywhere. This is what Corrie ten Boom said. She said, if the devil can't make you bad, he'll make you what? Busy. You got that? So what do badness and busyness have in common? Yes, you don't have time for God. You don't have time for one another. What else do they have in common? They both begin with B. Okay, that's true. But they both cut us off from our connection to God, to people, and to our own soul, don't they? When you're so busy, you can't even think, that you don't even know what your thoughts are. You can't get deep thoughts. that you're distracted easily, right? So chronic busyness really is, I think, a big trap that we are all in. Not that we're bad people, it's just we're so busy, you have no time to think, no time to, and I am amazed that people take time to come to listen to anybody speak, right? Much less me. Because what? You're just so busy.
That's why we're late.
Yeah, that's right. You're like, yes, but we hit the pause button every now and then because because we say I need some spiritual refreshing. I need some centering of my thoughts. I need to know what I think, and I need to listen to God speak to me. I need to connect with God. I need to connect with other people, and I need to connect with my own soul. Okay, that's really important. So there's a really good writer. His name is John Mark Comer, and he's a pastor. When he started his church in Portland, Oregon, he had no members. He just started a church plant. Within a year, he had 1,000 members. The next year, he had 2,000 members. The next year, he had 3,000 members. By the 7th year, he had 7,000 members or more in his church. He was burnt out. And he said he hit the wall. Came home, he was just sitting there watching a karate movie. And he's like, I don't even like karate movies. Why am I watching this? And then he realized his brain was fried, right? He was just too busy. Well, the solution, he had to stop. And he did. He stopped. He ended up writing this book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And in the book, he says, hurry is the great enemy of spiritual life in our day. You must ruthlessly eliminate hurry from your life. One of the things that he discovered, amongst other things, he discovered that he needed to be still. He needed to slow down. And that means slow down. So one of the things that he did was he only answers email, even though he has a bigger than 7,000 member church. He only answers email one day a week on a Monday. He has email only on his desktop computer, not on his phone. He's eliminated most of the apps off of his phone. And he takes Sabbath, the biblical Sabbath, every week. He has actually discovered that the biblical Sabbath is mandated in the scriptures and that Sunday is not. That's huge. Isn't that a huge discovery for a man who was a Sunday church leader? And this is becoming big now because so many churches are starting to discover and church leaders are discovering the benefits of the Sabbath. And I'm going to share that with you this evening. So before 1879, when Edison invented the electric light bulb, the average person slept 11 hours a night. You're just kind of looking at me. That took me a while to figure that out, right? How many of you sleep 11 hours a night? None of us, right? Actually, of all the places I've gone in the country, only once did I see, and it was a little girl in high school. She put up her hand and she said she gets regularly about 11 or 12 hours a night. So she goes to bed at 7, right? She wakes up around 7. So, and she was a cheerful little girl, really cheerful little girl, and very bright. And she lived in Kelowna. So, isn't that amazing? So, before electricity, do you think electricity affected us?
No.
Very much. And we think in a good way, but in some ways it's not good for our health. Okay? So, let me share some other things with you. So, the end time battle for worship is really about rest. And it is about worship, of course. So I want to talk to you tonight about some of the profound scientific and deeply spiritual aspects to this, right? So number one, I think we live in a restless world. Is that right? Yes. A restless world. And when we're restless, it leads to exhaustion and stress and running on empty. So studies are now showing us that that this is detrimental to our health in very, very many ways. Okay, in Revelation chapter 14, verse 11, it says, they have no what? No rest, day or night, who worship the beast and his image, whoever receives the mark of his name. So rest has a very big part to play in the end time message and what the beast does. Because the beast wants us to be restless, right? Doesn't want us to be focused, doesn't want us to be clear. It also has a part to play when it comes to worship. So end time crisis is about worship and rest in God's design. That's why I'm so excited about this. So this is, sometimes we think it's just about politics and economics, and I think that has a part to play in it. But really, worship is really going down to God's design. God is the creator. He designed us in a certain way to live a certain way. And when we follow human traditions, then it leads to spiritual exhaustion, right? So God built us and built right into the very fabric of creation, into the very fabric of you and me. He designed us. And he's woven this into our bodies, that we need rest. But Satan's strategy is to keep humanity too busy to think, too distracted to worship, and too exhausted to stand firm in the final test. So this is Jonathan Haidt. He's a professor from New York University, and he wrote a book called The Anxious Generation. Here's what he says. Teens need more sleep than adults, at least 9 hours a night. Almost all teenagers, as they reach puberty, become walking zombies because they are getting far too little sleep. And he's saying that the direct causation of this is screens, okay? Screens, specifically devices and apps. So he's saying social media for girls and games and pornography for boys. And so he's saying this is a direct causation. They can actually measure this. So we need more sleep, but there is a sleep deprivation amongst our teens. And of course, adults as well. So they can measure this, and it's very clear that teens who get less than 7 hours of sleep, it has increased for boys and girls since 2010 when the first apps came out on phones, okay? So it has steadily been increasing. So here's what, this is in a book called Eat, Move, Sleep. And this is written by a man who works for Gallup, and he does lots of research. So here's what he says. People who typically had less than 7 hours of sleep were nearly 3 times as likely to develop a cold. Wow. Don't get less than 7 hours of sleep a night. But when they're regularly doing this, did you know that the Guinness Book of World Records will not accept anymore anyone trying to break the world record for the longest person going without sleep, right? Because they found that it is so detrimental to people's health that has long-term ramifications. So people who used to set records for like sleep deprivation for like 9 days, 11 days, 14 days, those people, they go back and they test them and they have chronic problems with sleep, like insomnia. They can't sleep. And so it causes problems for years and years afterwards. And they're saying this is detrimental to people's health. And so they won't allow that to happen. I think that's a good thing. So one study found that losing 90 minutes of sleep reduces daytime alertness by nearly 1/3. Wow. Wow. So you're not as alert. Okay. Researchers have identified that children with higher sleep quality perform better in the classroom, are more active, and eat healthier food. In other words, they make better, healthy food choices, okay? Because when you're sleep deprived and you don't get enough sleep, you just want something that will give you instant energy, like a donut or a chocolate bar, right? You just want some kind of sugar, right? Or some kind of a fix that is usually instantaneous. Not a good thing. So the CEO of Netflix boasted that their only competition is sleep. Because if people didn't go to sleep, they would just stay on Netflix 24/7, right? That's what he's saying. So studies show that that high social media use predicted sleep problems and worse mental health. This is really clear. So Jonathan Haidt goes into this in detail, and that's why his book is so outstanding. I would recommend that you read it. These studies do not just show correlation, but they also prove causation, which I think is really critical here. So God built us with rhythms, right? And scientifically and biblically, we have evidence that we live in certain rhythms. So it's built into the fabric of our creation that God wants us to live this way. So let me give you some of these. So there's something called a circadian rhythm. So that's a 24-hour cycle that human beings live by, you live by, I live by. So every human body has a circadian rhythm. So this is the clock that regulates your sleep, your hormones, your body temperature, your digestion, your mental alertness. So scientists have found that even when people live in caves or under the ocean, like I met a guy who once, I just met this guy once, and he was a deep sea diver. He goes up into the North Sea, and he goes out there for a month at a time. Can you imagine being under the ocean in an underwater, it's a capsule, and he and another guy live down there, and they work on these oil rigs, and they go out, I guess, I don't know what time they go out, but they go out for a certain period of time, and then they go back into their capsule and sleep. And can you imagine living like that for 30 days at a time? You don't see any light, you don't see, but here's what they found. People with no lights, no clocks, no phones, their bodies still are on a 24-hour cycle, right? So even without sunlight, your body is on a 24-hour cycle. That's called a circadian rhythm. So this rhythm, it's not cultural, it's not regional, it's biological. That's the way God designed you with this daily rhythm. But here's another thing that a lot of people don't know. They know about circadian rhythms, but they don't know about something called circumcepta patterns or rhythms that we have which are 7-day rhythms in biology. We know this now, and there's a number of books and research studies that have been done on this. And what they've discovered is researchers have discovered that there's 7-day rhythms in humans, in animals, and in plants. That's incredible. So the immune system, your hormones, your mental health, they follow a 7-day pattern. That's pretty cool, isn't it? A 7-day pattern. So how does that 7-day pattern look? And why is this happening to us? Okay? So we have to ask this question, I guess, to begin with. Where did the 7-day weekly cycle come from? So astronomically, did you know that there's absolutely no reason for a 7-day week? We don't know why. We can't measure why. We can just see that we need it. So where does it come from? I'll show you. So one day is the time that it takes the Earth to rotate once on its axis. You got that? That's a whole day. So every 24 hours, you're spinning. The whole world is spinning, right? And you'll spin around one full circuit in 24 hours. A month is the time elapsing between successive phases of the moon, right? So that's a month. So we have a reason for a day. We have a reason for a month astronomically. A year is the time that it takes for you to orbit the sun. So once every 52 weeks, you get a free trip around the sun, right? Or 365 and a quarter days. And But why 7 days? Why is there a 7-day week? The only reason is because of Genesis 2. So we are told that the Lord created the earth in 6 days and rested on the 7th day. That's the source. So the source that we have for keeping a 7-day cycle is the Bible. So the Bible is the source of a 7-day week. That's really key that we understand that. So, and we get it from here. Genesis chapter 2, verses 1-3. Take a look at what it says here. Thus the heavens and the earth and all the host of them were what? Finished, okay? And on the what day? 7th day, God ended his work which he had done, and he rested on the 7th day from all his work which he had done. So God obviously has a circa septa rhythm as well. Then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it he rested from all his work which God had created and made. Did you know the word 7 appears how many times there? 3 times. 7, 7, 7. Right there talking about the Sabbath and the creation of the Sabbath. So the Bible begins with these 3 numbers, 7, 7, 7. The Bible ends with 3 numbers, 6, 6, 6. Yeah? Can you see how that is like there's a clash going there, right? 6 is man's number. 6 is man's way of doing worship. 7 is God's way, right? And there's a clash that comes there. So these daily rhythms, this is what God built within us. These weekly rhythms are woven right into the fabric of our being. And Satan's strategy is to keep us too busy to think, too distracted to worship, and too exhausted to stand firm in the final test. So there were historical attempts to change the week. The first one that we know of, and there are others that we can talk about, I'll give you 2. One is the French Revolution. So during the French Revolution, they tried to remove God from the picture completely. And so they got rid of Bibles, for example, and burnt Bibles. There was actually a room where they had, where Voltaire wrote that we would never have another Bible in France ever again. Where he penned those words, that actual desk and that room where he wrote it, that building is now owned by the Bible Society. And it is stacked floor to ceiling with Bibles. So God has a way of kind of contradicting human efforts to say, get out of my life, right? So the French Revolution introduced a 10-day week to be, what's that word? Rational. We are rational. We are reasonable human beings. We're going to do a 10-day week. Why do we need a 7-day week? Well, what happened? The results were, number 1, productivity did what? Collapsed. Mental health declined. Death rates rose. And within 12 years, they returned to the 7-day week. Wow. No matter where they tried this in the world, it was always back to the 7-day cycle. And they tried to get God out of the picture. That was their whole purpose. Now, I'll give you another example, and that is in communist Russia. The Soviet Union tried a 7-day continuous week with no weekends. So, what did I say, 5? Actually, sometimes I don't. I hear myself, but I don't know what I said. So the Soviet Union tried a 5-day continuous week with no weekends. Can you imagine that? 5 days, 5 days, 5 days, right? That's crazy, okay? And no weekends to maximize production and weaken the religion. So in other words, get rid of religion. So, what did Karl Marx say? That religion is the opiate of the people. Let's get rid of religion, right? So let's get rid of religion and let's maximize productivity. What happens? Families were split up and worship became impossible. That was their purpose. So results, number one, machinery broke down from overuse. Productivity collapsed. We've seen this before. Mental health declined. Death rates rose. And the system was abandoned. So how many times human beings try to change God's rhythm, it always leads to chaos. Always leads to chaos. You are not a machine. Don't treat yourself that way. When you treat yourself that way, you get sick. You're not a machine. You're a human being, right? You're not a human doing. Just be. So I often say to my wife, I'm a beer, and she says, I'm a doer. Because she's a Martha, right? She just does. And she thinks about things that are going to happen like next week. And so we will be lying in bed. I'll get up in the middle of the night. I'll go to the washroom. I'll come back, and my side of the bed is already made. It's like incredible. Like she's way steps ahead of me, like far ahead of me. And so that's wonderful. And but sometimes I slow her down, and sometimes she tries to speed me up. And it works. Scientific confirmation across species. I think this is fascinating. This is absolutely fascinating to me. So even under constant laboratory conditions, with no light or social cues, living organisms still follow a 7-day rhythm, indicating that the source is endogenous, which means it is from within, right? You understand that word endogenous? So it's from within. So this is built into us. We are built to live this way. And here's the thing about this, that these biological rhythms, they are displayed in various levels of organization in diverse species, from unicellular sea and algae, and I could give you the name of them, but I can't pronounce it because it's all Latin, to plants and insects and fish and birds and mammals, including human beings, okay? So this is inside of us. We're built with a 7-day cycle. But here's the crazy things. Even plants, even sea algae, even fish, okay? So across the board, you have birds. And do you know any stories of animals that they have seen and they have studied in nature where they keep the Sabbath, where they actually rest on the Sabbath? If you go online, you can watch a professor and he talks about it for like 2 hours. All these different animals that he's observed in nature, frogs and beavers and ox and dogs and all kinds of creatures. It's incredible. And to me, that's fascinating. Bees, okay? All kinds of insects. So here's what they found with this scientific confirmation across the species. Number one, the pattern is 6 days of work and 1 day of rest a week. Isn't that cool? That's so cool. I love that. So we need this. We need that rest, okay? So 6 days of work and 1 day of rest. The second thing is evolution can't explain this universal pattern. They are stumped. Evolutionists look at that and they say, that makes no sense. It just seems what? Arbitrary. It's weird, it's arbitrary. And you understand the word arbitrary? Arbitrary means it's just at a whim. This was like, it's just random. Why does this happen? Why is this built into the fabric of creation? And many times when people talk about the Sabbath, they will say, it's just arbitrary. It doesn't matter, it's just arbitrary. You know what arbitrary means? Arbitrary means like, Hitler, like he made a rule that the only people who are good people had blue eyes and blonde hair. That's arbitrary, okay? I was gonna use another word, right? Like dumb, right? Because it just makes no sense. Like, why would you say that? It's because it's personal. It's at a whim. It's just me, because that's the way I feel. It's like, that's not built into the fabric of us, right? Like, that's like saying only people with white shoes are gonna go to heaven. Well, it's just dumb, right? It's like, no, that's arbitrary. God's laws are not arbitrary. They are the way we are designed to live, and God is himself living that way. We see that's in the scriptures. But it makes sense if a creator programmed creation into a weekly rhythm. I think it's more than programmed. That's just the way we are. We are built this way because this is God's design. Okay? And if it were left to us, if we said, hey, just spend some time with me, we would probably we wouldn't, right? We just wouldn't. But because God built it into our design to have to do this, when we do it and he commands us to do it, it's like a prescription. It's not a restriction, it's a prescription. It's saying, this is what you do, right? When a doctor gives you a prescription, it's like, this is what you should do to be healthy, right? So every living creature has a 7-day rhythm. I think it's a beautiful sentence, right? Every living creature has a 7-day rhythm. I just love that. So the benefits of rest and the Sabbath. So what does it do to us? Number one, it boosts immunity, which is what we need. And when you do, you're getting, all the immune markers are going up. It lowers blood pressure. It reduces inflammation in your body. And what else does it do? It improves focus, memory, and lowers anxiety and depression. I think that's pretty cool. So it's good for you. And when God says, I have commanded you to do these things for your good always, he means it. I'm giving you a prescription and I'm the doctor. Do it, right? And so commandment, that actual word for commandment means prescription. That's it. I'm giving you a prescription. Here, can you take it and do it? Or are you just, you can throw the prescription away if you want. And that's the choice that he gives us. There's something in Japan called forest bathing. That doesn't mean that you go out and you have a bathtub in the forest. What it means is you go into the forest and you just take in all of nature. Isn't that beautiful? So this forest bathing, what they said when you're going out and you walk in the forest, what does it do? They know that it decreases depression. There's a decrease in anger and hostility. I think we need that. A decrease in tension and anxiety. A decrease in fatigue. Wow, got more energy. I went out. We have a little 1-year-old boy and a little 3-year-old boy in our house. So I was playing with Tane today for hours, and I was running with him and running up the hill, and it was cold outside, and he was born in Australia, and so, my daughter's child, and he hasn't seen ice before. So ice was out there this morning, right? And it was all over the slide and the grass, and it was all, it was like, Opa, this is incredible. Like he loved the frost, and he was just running and he was sliding everywhere. And we played and we kicked the ball. We did it for at least 2 hours. It was like the most fun thing I've done in my life. I just love it. And guess what? He is full of energy, like full of energy. He can just run and run and run and run and run and run. And then his mom told me that he got in the car and she had him to go shopping. And what did he do? He was like completely out. And then I had to get my work done. My wife says to me, you just exhausted Tane out. I said, he exhausted me out too, but I got to get my work done, right? So decrease in fatigue, get out there in nature. Improved restful sleep, I love that. And decrease in confusion and increase in vigor, okay? This is proven, this is tested. So what am I saying to you? What I'm saying is that being closer to creation on the Sabbath is very healing. Getting out into nature, right? Getting out into nature, enjoying that during the time of rest. It's very restful to your soul, to your body, to your whole being. You feel much better. It's a prescription for health. So the benefits of rest and the Sabbath. Well, Sabbath is a gift. So many times we think it's a restriction. It's not a restriction. I mean, I didn't grow up with it myself. I didn't grow up as keeping the Sabbath, but when I did, and I saw some of my friends and they had grown up with the Sabbath, they were like, oh, it's so restricting, you know? And for me, it was like, no, this is cool. Like, this is really nice. I enjoyed it. I could actually be quiet, right? So the Sabbath is both biological and biblical because it is a prescription. It's a prescription, not a restriction. It's a prescription for physical, mental, and spiritual flourishing. It's good for you. So Jesus tells us that the Sabbath was made for who? And when it's man, it's mankind is what it's saying. It's actually, the word there is, what do we call it? Anthropology, right? You know, anthropos, you know, us humans. That's what it's for. It's for us human beings and not man for the Sabbath. So we're not keeping the Sabbath. The Sabbath keeps us, right? It does. If we don't keep the Sabbath, if I didn't have a Sabbath, man, I would just be burnt out. Right? And I get rest on the Sabbath. There's something good about it. It's just really, really good. We need it. So in Exodus chapter 23, verse 12, it says, even servants, strangers, and animals were to rest on the Sabbath. So this is God saying, all of my creation was designed this way. And when you do this, it's good for you. Okay. So why did God, and I've told this to you already, why did God give to his people the 10 commandments, of which the Sabbath forms a part? And it's this. And the Lord commanded us to do all these statutes. Why? For our good always. Always. That he might preserve us alive as we are this day. You want to get rid of cancer? You want to get rid of confusion. You want to get rid of fatigue, right? Rest. You need it. You can't take it in a pill, right? You can't quickly drink it down. Rest is something where you hit the pause button, right? There's no vitamin R. You just have to take it. You just have to rest. So the biblical foundation for the Sabbath. In Genesis chapter 2, verses 2 and 3, we already saw it. God rested and blessed and sanctified the Sabbath. Now, you understand what rest is. Blessing is something where the idea of blessing is to speak well of, so they would bless a child, for example. So the Jewish person, like a Jewish father on Friday night, as the Sabbath hours were coming, as sun was setting, he would put his hands on the children and he would bless them, which means to speak well of them and to empower them. So there's something empowering about the Sabbath, right? And then sanctified means to set it apart as holy, okay? Set it apart as holy. So it's powerful, it's restful, and it sets you apart as holy. Now that word holy means complete, okay? When you're wholly committed to God, then you are holy because you're completely committed to him, holy. And when you hit the pause button, you say, I'm going to keep the Sabbath day, and it keeps you, and you rest on that day. You are wholly committing. You're stepping out and you're saying, I'm going to make a decision that's not many people are making this decision. We just go, 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 go. So the second thing about the Sabbath is that we are to, what did we say? Take those two fingers, meaning the fourth commandment, and you point them to your temple and you remember. That's right. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. So it's a sign of God's creation and sanctification. Okay? He sanctifies us. He cleanses us. He makes us holy. So what does the Sabbath symbolize? So it is a sign. This is important. A sign that God is the creator, right? He is the creator. Now take a look at this verse from Exodus 31, verse 17. It says, it is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. Now, by the way, I'm going to show you a verse right after this to show you that you are Israel if you believe in Christ, right? So it is a sign between you and God. How long? Forever. Forever. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. So it's saying it again. He is doing this as something that is a sign between us and him, and it's built into the very fabric of our being. So he's the creator. Number two, that he is the redeemer. He is our redeemer. So it says here, moreover, I also gave them my Sabbaths to be a sign between them and me, that they might know that I am the Lord who sanctifies them. I'm the one who sets you apart as holy, because I'm wholly committed to you, and what he does for me, I look at him, and by his example, and I'm inspired to do the same. I respond wholly to him, committed to him, but he's the one who makes me holy. So here's the place. So who are the true children of Israel? It's you. And it says, and now that you belong to Christ, you are the true children of Abraham. So you are his heirs, and God's promise to Abraham belongs to you. That's pretty clear, isn't it? Yeah. So the Sabbath is between us and God. By belonging to Christ, we are keeping the Sabbath. Did Jesus keep the Sabbath? Oh, very much so, yes. So, the Sabbath throughout the Bible. So let me give you some places. Number one, Luke chapter 4, verse 16. You can see other places, but it says that Jesus kept the Sabbath, okay? From when he was a little boy, throughout his life, he kept the Sabbath. Did people have a problem with him keeping the Sabbath? They had a problem because they said he was breaking the Sabbath. But was he breaking the Sabbath? No. He was doing good on the Sabbath. Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? Absolutely. So it wasn't the day they had a problem with, it was the way he was keeping the Sabbath. So they had restrictions. They were like looking at the Sabbath as something that was restrictive, and they were making it restrictive. They didn't see it as a prescription for rest and a prescription for healing. The apostles kept the Sabbath. We see that throughout the book of Acts. There are repeated, many, many times where the apostles were keeping the Sabbath after Christ was on the cross and went up to heaven. So Jesus told his disciples to pray that their flight will not be on the Sabbath. So that was decades after the cross. And some people say, well, no, the cross did away with the Sabbath. Well, why would it do away with the Sabbath? There's no place in the Bible where it said it did away with the Sabbath. And it's for all time. The Sabbath is for all time. Now, how do we know that? Well, will the redeemed keep the Sabbath in heaven? Yes. So, Isaiah chapter 66, verses 22 and 23, it says, for as the new heavens and the new earth, which I will make, shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. Isn't that beautiful? Are we going to keep Sabbath in heaven? Yeah. Okay. So we can worship with God in heaven, with Jesus in heaven. I look forward to that. Then I don't have to preach. Jesus preaches. This is the only time. I mean, I don't really want to do this anymore. He can do it. He's in charge. And he'll preach much better. He doesn't even have to use PowerPoint. He can just create it with his hands, right? He can say, let me illustrate this. Hummingbird, come over here. Let me show you. And he can show you how it was all designed because he made it. He's the creator. And everything listens to his voice. So how did Paul and the apostles treat the Sabbath? Well, Paul kept the Sabbath as his custom. He was a Jew, of course, but then when he became a Christian, he didn't do away with the Sabbath. Next, he taught the Jews and the Greeks, the Gentiles, every Sabbath, it says in Acts chapter 18, verse 4. And then the Gentiles begged to hear again the next Sabbath. So over and over again, we see people meeting on the Sabbath. Okay? So that's repeated there. So is today's Saturday still the Sabbath that Jesus kept? Well, what does the Bible say? Well, when Jesus was crucified, what do we call that day usually? Good Friday, right. And when he rose from the grave, it's usually called Easter Sunday. So what's between Easter Sunday and Good Friday? The Sabbath, right? Saturday. So Saturday is the Sabbath. He rested in the tomb on the Sabbath. He rested when he was, in worship on the Sabbath as he was alive. So he even kept the Sabbath in his death. Okay? So it's there. It's right there. And we know that Saturday has not changed. Even in calendar changes, there was no weekly cycle change. Okay, it was just numbers on a calendar, but that didn't change the weekly cycle. So Sabbath is Saturday between Friday and Sunday. Okay, that's pretty clear, isn't it? And do the Jewish people still keep the same Saturday Sabbath now? Yeah, they still keep it. So it hasn't been lost. They would have told us if it was. And if we see from creation, if there was a time where it may have been lost is when they were in Egypt. Remember they were in Egypt and they were slaves. They couldn't take a day off, right? But then they were there for 40 years. Is that right? How long were they slaves for? 400 years. That's right. They were walking in the desert for how long? 40 years. There you go. So after 400 years, you would think, they lost track of the Sabbath. So how did God remind them of when the Sabbath was and reinstitute the weekly cycle? With the manna from heaven. So every day they would have to get out enough for a day, right? And if they had too much for the next day, what would happen to it? It'd go rotten. But on the Friday, they would have to collect how much? A double portion, and then it would stay good over Sabbath because there was no manna on Saturday morning or on the Sabbath. And so when that happened, over 40 years wandering in the desert, I think they knew then what the 7-day cycle was, right? Yeah, and we haven't lost it between then, time of Christ and the time of Christ and now. So how many languages call Saturday the Sabbath? Do you know? There are 150 languages. Do any of you speak a language where the day we call Saturday is Sabbath? Yes? What is it? Sabbath. Yeah. Okay. And
Portuguese, it's Sabado.
Sabado. In Portuguese, anyone else? Yeah. Sabota is Ukrainian. Okay. Yeah. And Shabbat in the Hebrew language. Okay. A friend of mine, he's Icelandic, and they number their days, day 1, day 2, day 3. But then when they get to the 7th, they call it Sabbath. Right? So it's pretty cool. So has anyone been authorized to change God's holy day? Well, Proverbs chapter 30, interesting place to go. 5 and 6, it says, every word of God is pure. He is a shield to those who put their trust in him. Do not add to his words. Okay? Don't add to his words, lest he rebuke you and you be found a liar. So don't change the word of God. There's a lot of times in the scriptures where he actually says to us, don't do that, right? Follow what he's asking you to do. And then, so no one can change God's scriptural defined holy Sabbath day. I think that's pretty clear. So when does the Sabbath begin and end? Well, you know that, don't you? So Leviticus 23:32. 23:32. From evening to evening, you shall keep the Sabbath. So evening to evening. So from Friday night when the sun sets until Saturday night when the sun sets. Actually, the day in the Jewish calendar was always evening, right? First, from evening to evening. So when is, for example, when is Christmas Eve? It would be the night of the 25th or the night of the 24th? The night of the 24th. So in the Bible where it talks about there was evening and morning the first day, The part of the day that comes first is the dark part, and then the light part, right? When is New Year's Eve? The night of the 31st of December or the night of the 1st of January? 31st of December, right? So that's built into us, and we didn't even recognize it. So the evening of Friday till Saturday evening is the Sabbath. So Mark chapter 1, verse 32 says, at evening when the sun set, okay? That is the time. So which day is the Lord's day? Exodus 20, verse 10, it says, the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord. So the seventh day is the Lord's day. In Isaiah chapter 58, verse 13, it says, my holy day, God speaking there. And in Mark chapter 2, verse 28, it says, the Son of Man is the Lord of the Sabbath. So that would be the Lord's day, Sabbath. And there's only one place in the whole scriptures where it uses the expression Lord's day, and that's in the book of Revelation, where John is saying he was in the Spirit on the Lord's day. And some people say, oh, he was in the Spirit on Sunday. Well, he never says that, right? But people superimpose that meaning there. Okay, and the only time that we have Lord's Day mentioning in the scripture, it refers to the Sabbath. Okay, but that actual expression, Lord's Day, comes in Revelation. Okay, so I'm going to give you some quick things from the scriptures to show you that prophetically, the Sabbath was under attack, but worship was under attack. Okay, first of all, there was enforced worship in Daniel chapter 3. We'll look at those in detail, a little bit more detail in a minute. In Daniel chapter 6, you have human law versus God's law. And in Daniel chapter 7, you have a religious power. It's actually a political religious power that thinks to change times and laws. Okay, it's a little horn power, it's called. And in Daniel chapter 5, Babylon is judged, this mene, tekel, upharsin. And so let's take a look. Why are we looking at these? Because 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 11 and 12 says that these things that happened in the past are an example to us, or an ensample, it says in the King James, which is, these are types and patterns. So they are warnings to us and an admonition. They're written for our admonition upon whom the ends of the earth have come. So we need to look at these things, and he says that so that we can stand, lest we, don't take heed and fall. So remember the golden image. The first image that we saw in Daniel 2, and it was successive metals. What was gold in there? The head. And it represented what kingdom? Babylon. And who was the leader? Nebuchadnezzar. So Nebuchadnezzar says, I'm going to make a statue that is all gold. And so what is he saying? He's putting up a counterfeit to God's plan. His counterfeit is, my kingdom's going to last forever. He had truth given to him, but now he takes it and he changes it. And that's exactly what happens in the book of Revelation. You have a counterfeit way of worship, day of worship, and it's introduced. And so in that way, the same as, and it's called Babylon as well. So the king or the state commanded all to bow down and worship this image whenever they did what? Played music. So music was playing, bow down and worship this golden image. Interesting dimensions on the golden image. We won't go into that right now, but I think it's very interesting that, so these men, 3 men stood up. What was their names? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. They were friends of Daniel, right? And what did they say to the king? The king said, you need to bow down and worship. And they said to him, King, be it known, we won't do this, because that is, which commandment would they be breaking? The second one. Remember the second one, right? Don't bow down and worship idols. And so they didn't want to do that. So they said, even if God does not deliver us, we know that he can deliver us. But even if he doesn't deliver us, we will not serve your gods. Right? That's pretty cool, isn't it? So I will die for my faith. I know God can save me, but if he doesn't, that's okay with me because I would rather die than dishonor the Lord. Okay? So these three Hebrews, they stand firm. Everyone else goes down, and what happens to them? They get thrown into the fiery furnace, and who ends up with them in the fiery furnace? Jesus. Okay. So Revelation chapter 13 gives you a parallel where you have enforced worship by a beast. And the beast says, unless you worship according to my system, you cannot buy or sell. In other words, it's life-threatening. And the state church system is threatening life if you don't worship the beast's way in Revelation 13. Okay, so there's a parallel. In Daniel chapter 6, you have Daniel in the lion's den. What's the story? So you have the counselors of the king. They don't like Daniel because he's at the very top of the system, and the king trusts him, and so they want to discredit Daniel in some way, and so they make a law. They get the king to pass a law forbidding anyone to pray to anyone except for to the king for the next 30 days. Which law of the 10 Commandments would that be to break if Daniel was to pray to the king? Number 1, that's right. He would be putting it. So does Daniel say, okay, I'm going to pray to the king for 30 days, no problem? He says, no, I'm going to continue praying to God. And so that's the important thing is, and so Daniel's enemies, they had plotted against him saying, we will not find fault with him except concerning the law of his God. So let's go against the law of God by instituting a law of man and see what he does. You see what I'm saying? Same type of system. So we see this as an example. So prayer is forbidden by decree. You can't pray to God, the God in heaven. And they say, if you don't do this, you're going to be thrown into the lion's den. He's thrown into the lion's den. The king is distraught. He can't sleep the whole night. He thinks that Daniel's going to be dead in the morning. When he wakes up in the morning, he comes and he calls out, Daniel, are you still alive? And Daniel says, my God has preserved me. And then he's pulled out, he's faithful, and what happens to those bad guys? They're thrown in, and it says that the lions were pretty hungry before they even hit the bottom. So these lions, they were controlled by angels. They must have been. Somehow the Lord kept their mouths shut because they were pretty hungry. So this was divine law against man's decree. Do you see what's happening here? So these are examples. Daniel 3, Daniel 6, Daniel 5. In Daniel 7, I've got to go there before I go to Daniel 5. Daniel 7 is the little horn attacks, this little horn power. He's a horrible power. Doesn't he look terrible there? Okay, so this little horn of power, this is a power that thinks to change times and laws, okay? His intention is to change times. What time is in God's law? Only the Sabbath, right? And laws within the 10 Commandments, which law? He tries to change the Sabbath, but he also tries to change what? The second commandment. And so this is a power, and it is a religious political power, and it is after the fourth kingdom, which is Rome. So after the fall of Rome, this little horn power comes up. And it blasphemes God, it persecutes his saints for a period described as 1,260 years. We'll go into that in a little more detail tomorrow night. Or is it tomorrow night? Yes, it is tomorrow night. For a time, times, and half a time is what it says there. So that's 3.5 years, which is 1,260. Yes, the times, we'll go into it tomorrow. So this prophetic 1,260 years was a time period that went from 538 to 1798. It marked a period of persecution. So this builds, and it gets more deeply into identifying this final, attack on God's people and the difference between truth and error. So what happens in Daniel chapter 5 is that Belshazzar, who is the grandson of King Nebuchadnezzar, he thinks he's pretty much fireproof, and he's throwing a big party, but he's getting drunk, and he says, let's bring in all of the sacred objects from the temple, from the sanctuary in Jerusalem. He brings them all in. They're gold, and he's drinking out of the gold tablets. He takes the golden candlestick and he puts it by the wall, and he defiles these holy vessels. And then what does he see? God's judgment is pronounced, and it's written on the fingers is on the wall. And does he understand it? It says in the Bible that his knees are shaking. He's scared because he realizes God is speaking and he's writing. And all of a sudden he sobers up real quick. And he says, bring someone in. Daniel comes in, and he reads what's on the wall, and he says it's many, many tekel upharsin, which means you have been numbered and weighed and divided, and it's the end of your kingdom. So that parallels Revelation chapter 14 and 18, God's judgment message against Daniel. So what had happened? What can this judgment story in Daniel 5 tell us about the last days? Well, first of all, the ancient Babylon received a 3-part message, which was numbered, investigated. So God's investigating, he's counting it up. He is making a verdict, you're found wanting, and then he gave a sentence. Your kingdom is given to the Medes and Persians. Okay, those notes are not on there. They're just on the screen, so you don't have to do this in detail. We'll go into a little more detail tomorrow night. And then it tells us about modern Babylon. In Revelation chapter 14, we have an investigation, we have a verdict, Babylon is fallen, and a final sentence, not to receive the mark of the beast. Okay. And then we have this golden candlestick. And the golden candlestick represents the church in prophecy. So the church is supposed to give this message, and that's the end time church, to give this is the 7th candlestick, the last day church, and so it's supposed to give this 3 angels' messages, which we'll look in more detail tomorrow night. So Revelation 13, there's a final global test, and that final global test is it's coercion, it's forced worship by the beast. Love does not force, right? And so this is forced. Can you imagine forcing someone to worship? Forced worship. So this is what it says in Revelation 13, verses 16 and 17. It says, he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads. Their right hand meaning they will be forced to do it either with their hand, or they will actually internalize it and say, yes, I choose this for myself, okay? So, and some people have, well, is it a physical mark? No, it's not a physical mark. It's something that you've either internalized or you've been forced to do. Otherwise, that no one may be able to buy or sell except the one who has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name, okay? This is obviously symbolic. Revelation 14 says God's final message to the world is this: to worship the Creator. Go back to creation. You were designed to live this way. This is how I designed you to live. Revelation 14, verse 7 says, fear God. And I'm going to talk about that fear tomorrow night and what that fear is all about. This is not a fear of paralyzed. This is the fear to protect. This is a fear that is healthy, not unhealthy, okay? Not one that leads you to, like perfect love casts out all fear, because that kind of fear is torment. No, he's not asking us to be tormented by God, but to fear him in the sense that we respect him and look up to him. We'll go into that in a little more detail tomorrow night. So fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come. So this is the judgment message that I was referring to. And worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and the springs of water. Where does that language come from? It comes from Exodus 20, from the Sabbath commandment. Exodus 20, right in the Sabbath commandment. worship the Creator, and that's why you keep the Sabbath day, because he made what? The heavens and the earth and the sea and the springs of water. So it's a direct quotation from the Sabbath commandment. So at the end of time, the call to worship the Creator is a call back to the Holy Sabbath. That is the call back to the Holy Sabbath. So this is worship and loyalty. So the Sabbath is a sign of loyalty to the Creator. The Sabbath is an allegiance to God rather than to a counterfeit. So a man-made tradition equals an allegiance to a counterfeit. And so we want to have an allegiance to our Creator and not to a man-made counterfeit. So it's about who we worship and obey, because we were designed that way. Does it help you? Okay. So rest in God's gift. The Sabbath is a sign of relationship, okay, between us and our Creator. So the question is, will you align with God's rhythm? God has created you that way. He says it's for your good. And the end time people in Revelation chapter 14, verse 12 are described this way. Here is the patience, as we said last night, of the saints. Here are those who keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Faith of Jesus. So very, very much like that. So a personal decision, a question for you. Would you like to begin honoring God's Sabbath and receiving its blessings if you haven't already? And then your response. I'm sure many of you have made that decision. That's a beautiful decision, but when you make that and you realize, hey, this makes sense. When God asks us to do something, it's not arbitrary. It makes sense. This is the way we were designed to live. Okay. So, time to pray. Take a moment to go through these, to thank our Heavenly Father for designing us with rhythms of rest and worship, to thank Him for the Sabbath, the sign of His creative power and redeeming love. And as the world moves toward its final test, and I believe that we are moving in that direction, ask Him to anchor you in His truth and to help you to stand like Daniel and his friends, loyal, faithful, and resting in Jesus. Take a moment to pray together. Okay?
So we can share this with you.
Yes. That's right, that's right. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes. Okay. Thank you all. I've encouraged you to read from the book of Daniel one day, one chapter. How many of you have been doing that? How many have been reading from? Oh, good. Okay. Just read a chapter a day. Start with Daniel 1. It's real easy. It's stories. It gets a little bit deep at chapter 7. Okay? But before that, it's pretty easy to follow. And if you have any questions, but tomorrow night, it'll help you. So I think some of the stuff that we went through tonight as well kind of gives you, oh, yeah, I've read that. I understand what he's talking about. Good. So see you tomorrow night, and God bless you all. It's really good. My soul is really encouraged when I see you every evening. Just seeing everyone coming out, and I feel like we're becoming like a community of faith here. And so that's a good thing. So God bless you all. Love you. See you tomorrow night. Okay?